I'm Coach Tarek.
And I'm Vanessa.
We are your movement experts, and we are here to educate health and fitness professionals with the tools to create real change for and within the industry.
Hello, and welcome to our next episode of Purpose-Driven Movement. Our guest this week is Rhys James. He works for a pretty major company in the fitness industry space called Technogym. And this episode is all about fitness tech. And not only are we talking about fitness tech for performance and using them for wearables, but we also talk about fitness tech in the development of fitness products, machines, the stuff when you walk into a gym and you step onto a treadmill or you step onto a machine, you don't even think about all the time and the hours that have gone into creating that product for you. So this is what we're talking about today. And I think that you will be super surprised about all of the advancements that are coming through in this space. Not only can we wear tech now, but the tech that is coming out that is going to change the way that we train. I really, really hope you enjoy this episode.
Check out FTI's latest offer, which is 15% off of any of our online courses. Simply go to www.functionaltraininginstitute.com and input PDM15 at cart checkout.
I have my good friend and colleague on board with me today, Rhys James from Technogym. Hello, welcome.
Hey, Vanessa. Thanks so much for the opportunity to jump on. Really excited.
So as you heard from Rhys's intro, you'll know all about him. You're going to know a little bit more about him today, but this is quite a diverse topic that we're talking about all day. We're going to go into some tangents. I'm excited. You know, Rhys likes to be prepared, so I am throwing questions at him just to see how he goes. But Rhys, what does performance mean to you?
So I guess performance could be many things, whether it's performing just your daily tasks in your job, or if you are a high performance athlete. It's such an open topic, which I believe could be anything. But for me, it's the complete balance of your physiological, biomechanical and psychological well-being, as well as social. So yeah, coming from the sports science background, I would say that's quite biased towards the sports science, but that's what I would definitely say.
I like that you included biomechanical in there as well. And we are going to go into a little bit of the tech side of things. But if you were to explain that kind of methodology, like you've got physiological, biomechanical, you said social, and I'm missing one. What was the fourth one that you said there?
Psychological?
Yep, that's the one. Could you delve a little deeper as to like how they intersect and like maybe even just in your life, how they play out?
Yeah, I guess over the last few years, I have probably taken a bit more of a focus on the psychological side. In uni, obviously sports psychology, exercise psychology was something that wasn't at top of mind. However, now doing a lot of reading and obviously where the world's going in terms of, you know, a lot of the mental health issues out there, it's definitely become a factor which I've recognized as something way more important that maybe the industry is missing. You know, cognitive fitness, that side of thing is great for longevity. And I really think it is the next best thing. And seeing how technology is advancing to provide, you know, a bit more guidance and in turn motivation, which in turn leads to results, which in turn leads to retention and therefore better health. I think the psychological side definitely impacts a lot. And joining you for a workshop the other week, talking about the biomechanics and posture and all of that, you know, there's so much that psychological elements, you know, how psychology can affect that as well, you know, mood and how that affects your posture, which in turn affects how much oxygen you can consume. It's huge. And that's, for me, now the foundation of everything is psychology.
Awesome. Yeah, really cool. I think that's a great point. And I didn't see the link there initially, but that was a perfect sum up. So for those of you at home, when we're talking about like biomechanical aspects in fitness, Rhys, what are some of the things that we might be looking at that could relate to our health and fitness?
One of the quotes that stands out is, when your mind grooves, your body moves, or something like that. I think that's what, I can't remember where I learned that, but that stands out. So as long as you're moving well and freely and pain-free, then for me, that, you know, makes me feel good. For me, I'm a morning riser, so getting my movement and biomechanics in early sets me up for the day. So I think, yeah, there's a big relationship there.
Yeah, cool. Excellent. So, pounding the pavement, hitting the gym, all of those kind of things would probably be those biomechanical aspects. So let's dive into that a little bit. I know you're deep into the tech side of things, and working for Technogym, you're in the forefront of what consumers and what facilities gain in terms of tech in fitness. When you hear the word tech, especially related to fitness, what does it really mean to you, or what does it actually mean?
Again, it's massive, and it's such a great opportunity for me working with Technogym, because at the heart of it is biomechanics and data and analytics and all of that. But at the end of the day, a lot of people don't really care about that. They just want to have a good workout. However, in order to have a good workout, you've got to have a great experience. And some of the new stuff coming out in the field of AI is really exciting to help people have that great experience. And currently on trend right now is personalization. And the tech is allowing us to offer better personalized workout experience for each member, which in turn provides them with a bit more guidance and potentially more variety as well, helping them get into things that they may not have got into before. So definitely the tech side of it is definitely inspiring people to work out through increasing their experience when working out.
Cool. So I'm really interested in this because you and I both kind of really enjoy the tech side of things. We're a little bit on the nerdier, that side of the spectrum there. But I think a lot of people are afraid of that. PTs, potentially, I've heard it before coming from PTs, where they get scared that an AI is going to be able to write better programs for their clients than they are. And on that topic, what do you have to say in response to that?
I definitely don't think it will replace. It's going to enhance what they're able to do. For example, if I've only got 2 hours with a client a week, those 2 hours I need to focus on maybe more of the technical stuff, maybe more energy system development, or even biomechanical stuff, or even psychology. But I've only got 2 hours. How can I fit all of that in, which probably is most of it would be at a low intensity if I was to do that, and still get them to have results? So the AI piece will allow us to give more guidance when you're not with them. And, we've really got to leverage that, because relationships are central to everything at the end of the day, and AI will just enhance what you can do and your availability, really.
Yeah, that's so simply put, and it's so spot on as well. I think that's the piece that we all forget, is that if you train your client once a week, you're seeing them for less than 1% of an hour once a week. And that's massive. And so when you're talking about AI and giving them a better experience, could you describe to PTs how they might use it with their clients, really get into that kind of nitty-gritty detail?
Yeah, I guess capturing data is the thing that stands out for me. So data, and having more data on an individual, whether that be them simply logging into a machine or into an app, capturing, simple things like their height, their age, let alone what their interests are, how often they want to train, maybe their heart rate variability, sleep, all of that. The more data you can get, the better you are at being able to predict the future. And for me, I think that will then lead into future opportunities to program effectively. If you can get this data and then leverage that through the AI, you can automate a lot of things and personalize a lot of things, which potentially without the technology you wouldn't be able to do, which essentially all goes back to that experience piece, because they would have a better experience even without you, because the data is doing a lot of that and the AI. Again, another quote that I'm going to spit out, which stands out for me, I guess you can relate it to the AI and the data, is today is the effect of the past and the cause of the future. And I don't know where I got that from. I can't remember, but I think it was relating to some Stoic book or something like that. But I thought about that, and it definitely relates to our industry, because everyone's, here today, right? So the effect of the past, that's your previous experience, previous history. But what you do today sets your intention for the future. So definitely is the cause of the future there.
I like it. That's cool. I really like that a lot. And I think that capturing information, we both know that PTs like to ask a lot of questions, and sometimes that data capture can be what do I do with all this information that I've got? You ask so much about the history, and I always question whether they're actually ever going back to that information ever again, and what are they utilizing that information for? There's no point asking your client all of these questions if you're never actually going to act on the information that they're giving you. And so I love the fact that you can use that past history, like you said, to kind of predict their future patterns. And so you could potentially get the AI to automate like a message to them. Is that right? To get them to prompt to remind them to do a workout or something?
Yeah, definitely. An example of that would be what we call, and we've developed at Technogym, called the Technogym Coach, which essentially when a user logs in, obviously it'll say hello, welcome. But over time, if it notices that you're clicking on quick start, which, if you know what you're doing is fine. But if you don't, then it's kind of a scary space. You might jump in there for 10 minutes, do a bit of a walk, maybe have a little trot, maybe chuck it on an incline. But then what else is there? It's an empty experience. Whereas over time, if the AI is recognizing that you're doing that, then it would say, hey, Vanessa, why don't you try this new HIIT routine? You click on it and it takes you to a dedicated programmed routine, which for that 10 minutes, you're going to get a lot more out because of the structure, because of the intensity, rather than just trotting along on 10 minutes, which isn't bad, right? It's still movement, which is great. But giving people or opening their eyes to what the potential of these machines are, thanks to just a little prompt saying, hey, why don't you try this workout? So essentially, it's been designed to motivate, guide, and suggest new ways to train, which in turn gets results, which in turn leads to retention, and therefore potentially builds community within your gym and helps the facility generate, more profit, let's say, with more members staying. Because a lot of people tend to leave within the first year because of their poor experience or lack of results. So there's so much benefits that you can get through the AI that potentially people aren't aware of.
Yeah, I will put a personal story on this, and it's literally something that happened really like a couple of hours ago. So I have recently changed all my personal training clients over to another platform, started to use Technogym platform, using the AI, using all of this stuff, because it's still new for me and I'm still finding the best ways to utilize it. And I've got all my clients to download this app. I've put some programs on there for them based on what I think that they will like. And I have a pair of people who are away currently. So that they're training, they're in Canberra, they're not local to me. And so I just populated some stuff on this app and I followed up with them today with a text. And the text was, thank you so much for the app. It's so engaging. There's so much on there that I can look at. There's like really cool workouts and I'm enjoying your program as well. And I think that trainers get really scared recommending content that's not their own because they feel like it's going to take away from what they do. Whereas I wholeheartedly believe that, there's so much content out there and we can find content that we align with, that works with your personal style and your values. Why not use that content there to not only supplement what you do, but it just benefits your client? Like if they need someone there constantly giving them direction or engagement or interaction, you can't be there for every workout. Well, I know I can't be there for every workout. To me, it's a no-brainer. And that was like a really quick, I've only had this app for 3 weeks. And it was a really quick demonstration to show that I don't have to be there for my client to then continue on that journey. And that's so powerful.
Yeah, so you're building out your ecosystem, let's say, rather than just the physical interaction with your clients. You're now building a system where potentially the facility and the face-to-face meeting isn't the center of your relationship. The ecosystem that you've built through the technology is the center. Whether they're on holiday, whether they're at the doctor's, whether they're in the gym, whether they're just at home, they're still connected through that ecosystem. And going back to where it all started, I was actually involved in a project when I was back in HQ, which basically got a load of us, a load of trainers, a load of sports scientists, a load of marketing people, and asked us just questions around how you train people, like what progressions, what prompts do you use? And I didn't know at the time that what they were doing, they were having a big focus group to develop this AI. And that was back in 2019, I'm going to say. And from there, this is where the Technogym Coach developed. And I only realized this the other day saying, oh, wow, this is actually what we were working on. And it's come full circle now. And now they've got a full department dedicated to AI, all from that little focus group. So it's so powerful. And it's definitely not something to be scared of for trainers out there. It's just going to enhance, if you're open to it enhancing your offering.
Yes, really cool. I would love to pick your brain a little bit about what you think about different wearables and the information that you can glean, like the same kind of relationship as a trainer from your client, or even as a trainer looking at that information yourself. Let's dive into that kind of big tangent there.
Yeah, it's such a popular topic, right? Because the last, 10 years, it's been top 5 wearable tech, and it's only, going to improve with the likes of Whoop, Oura Ring. I use a Polar Watch. Many people use Garmin's. It's great to see people tracking and monitoring, because if you can track it, then you can improve on it. So that's awesome. For me, I think that's going to be a huge avenue to help promote wellness and health span as opposed to just lifespan, being able to monitor and track it. Since when have we been able to see how well we've slept? And recently now that's the latest trend. And what's mine saying today? Mine's saying it's okay. I get quite picky with it now. And if it's not okay, then I get in a bit of a mood and I try and chill out or not. But yeah, it's such a great thing to have, I think. And again, goes back to data. And if you can feed the AI with the data, then it's better able to assist and predict future outcomes for you.
Yeah. This is interesting. And I've had this conversation with a couple of other guests on the show. Yes, that data is super interesting, but I love the conversation where you're like, oh, if I'm a bit sleepy, does it make me grumpy or do I have to calm myself down? But these are the valuable things about AI or wearables or tech, is that what I believe that it can really help you do is enhance your self-awareness and the questions that you ask yourself. Because at the end of the day, moving better and, like you said, increasing your health span, increasing your longevity, if that's what you want to do, it's all about asking yourself the right questions and using that information to progress.
Definitely. And you can see an instant impact. Like, for example, if you have a couple of drinks one night, the next day, my recovery, my heart rate variability is completely fallen off. So over time, maybe you don't need it all the time, but initially, I think it is a good thing just to educate people on where they're at and where they could be. But definitely if it's affecting people mentally and they're getting obsessed with it, then yeah, don't use it if it's triggering, or just learn to reframe it into a positive thing. But I definitely think it helps.
Very cool. So that's kind of the wearable side of tech. Now, the cool thing about your role with Technogym is that you get to kind of see the forefront of all of this other side of tech. Us as trainers, we walk into the gym and the equipment's there in front of us. And we really don't think about the research and development that's gone into this piece of equipment that's just kind of sitting there. Could you tell us a little bit about your experience with Technogym in understanding that process with tech? And then maybe let's talk about some of the really cool bits of kit that are really going to revolutionize the way that people are going to train.
Yeah, it's quite hard to start at a specific point with Technogym because there's so many things that we do. But I guess what Vanessa and I do, we have to make sense of all of that complex information and make it easy for people and easy for trainers and members to understand so they can engage in a great fitness experience. When I started off at Technogym, I started as an intern and I was fortunate enough to be involved in quite a few studies. And when we say we do the research, we do the research. We've got a fully kitted out biomechanical lab. I think, Vanessa, you've seen it as well. Yeah, loads of force plates, loads of motion capture, kinematics, kinetics, all of that in this lab where we do a lot of testing, even to the point where when I was testing out a cross trainer, we had force plates in our shoes to test where our foot placement is compared to others. It's so cool, which is quite hard to start. But if you look at a lot of the machines that we've made, they feel great, they feel smooth, comfortable. That's because that biomechanical analysis has gone into it, even to the point of the grips on the pure strength machines completely and ergonomically fits into your hand and it's super comfortable.
That's cool. I don't know how many other people will geek out about biomechanics labs, but you and I both spent a good portion of our degrees in biomechanics labs. And I think the value of that is so, it doesn't get seen and people don't understand that process. And that's totally fine. If you've never been involved in that, no one expects you to understand what it is. But when we start looking at how deeply companies will go to providing a good experience on a piece of equipment that you don't even think about, you just load some plates onto it and all of a sudden you're just, chest pressing away. That's really quite incredible to me.
100%. And we're not even getting into the latest and greatest yet, which I'm sure that will come up. But to the point now that we've got some machines that if you're new to exercise, we can actually prevent or reduce the risk of DOMs setting in. So then if you're new to exercise and you just need to come back to create a habit, you can, because deloading the eccentric phase and having the ability to do that will help people create an exercise habit because they're not waking up sore the next day and, I'm not going to come in today because I'm sore. So we're going down this avenue now with what we call BioStrength and BioCircuit. And we've got a new one, which is a bit more in the medical space and a bit more in the high performance physiological physio space called the BioStrength Rev, which I've already anticipated your question. But personally, I would normally just train with barbells, dumbbells, cowbells, go outside running. But now I've integrated these machines into my own training because technology is incredible. you can actually do so much more than you can do with just a barbell or a dumbbell, whether that be eccentric training, whether that be underwater resistance, elastic training, no inertia, isometric, isokinetic type of training, let alone all the advanced strength training methods. I've noticed that these machines are actually helping me more than a traditional barbell or a dumbbell.
This is cool. Okay, this is where we get to geek out a little bit. So let's start where you mentioned you could have a setting on these machines where people have a reduced ability to feel DOMs. Could we just go a little bit into the science of that? Because, what happens to your clients if you accidentally push them a bit too hard? They do feel sore, maybe days, maybe weeks. And on the really scary end of that spectrum, you can go into rhabdomyolysis and things like that, like quite intense DOMs where you've very much damaged muscle and connective tissue. And I've had several clients who've had that happen to them, not because I did that to them, I was rehabbing them from that. But there's definitely risks involved with very, very intense exercise. So what does that mean? How do you do that?
Yeah, so I guess a lot of those DOMs get caused by the eccentric portion of the muscle contraction. So if you can reduce that or even remove that, then there is going to be less DOMs because the muscle isn't being lengthened under tension and the tears are reduced. So your muscle's able to recover quicker and there's less inflammation off the back of that type of exercise. So that's great, like I said, for new exercises, potentially even athletes who don't want that muscle soreness, who only want to work on their concentric strength. Cyclists, for example, there's very little eccentric on that. So it's very much concentric. So again, going off a tangent to sport specific, but that's just one small element. That's just one type of resistance that it can mimic.
And just to put it into context, how would you do that? Or can you not do that with a barbell or a dumbbell?
It's very hard. You can do it, but you need people to assist, I guess. And that's when a spotter kind of comes into play, where if you haven't got a spotter or if you're unsupervised, it's very hard to achieve unless you've got the technology or unless you've got bands. Let's say you're doing a squat or a leg press and you've got a band attachment, which is assisting you on the eccentric phase. That's kind of one way you can do it, but it's an extra piece of equipment you need. So having a machine that does it all for you, I think is super beneficial. Obviously it costs quite a bit, but it's definitely worth it. And yeah, I guess if we go back a step to why Technogym developed this BioStrength and what we call the BioDrive technology, essentially like people who haven't got a trainer and sometimes who have got a trainer need guidance with strength training because maybe they don't know how many reps they need, how many sets to do, how long to rest, let alone what type of resistance I want to work at. How do I progress? People don't tend to know that unless you've got like your qualifications or degree or whatever, or you've got a great trainer with you, which I'd say that's 90+% of people in the world. And we know the benefits of strength training out there. And it's great to see that strength is now being recognized as an essential tool for longevity. So it is massively on trend, hence why Technogym wanted to do it, but also the benefits you can get from a guidance perspective for people training strength. Hence why then they built this technology with, aerospace technology built in, which means we can now mimic different types of resistances, combine them with the motivational guidance side of the screen, because these machines have a screen which helps you control your pace. It obviously determines work time, rest time, number of reps, much like you'd see on a cardio machine. You've now got that on a strength machine. So having those two combined is just a recipe for success for strength training, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I am lucky enough to be able to get to play with these machines, and having had that biomechanical knowledge, as soon as you showed it to me, it was like major light bulbs going off in my head, and it's really very, very cool and very interesting. But I think the challenge is that, when we're talking about concepts like eccentric phase reduction in load, these are relatively complex terms. And, if you have an exercise science degree, or perhaps if you're really into your strength and conditioning, you might know these phases, or, you might have seen these kinds of terms come up in really quite very specific strength educators. But I just don't think that a majority of the trainers out there have been exposed to this way of training, and let alone all the other modalities that we just kind of spoke about. And what I think might be really useful is we just kind of list some of these modalities and what it looks like in real life and what it can look like in the same machine, which is pretty blow your mind. But then that way, I think that if trainers want to experience what that actual training modality feels like, we're still able to go and do it, right? You don't need a machine to go and do it. You can go and do these other forms of training in other ways. But it does blow my mind still to this day that there's one machine that will do all of these different kinds of things. So let's have a look. So we talked about eccentric phase reduction. What are some of the other ones that we can do?
So essentially the opposite, so eccentric overload. So overloading on your eccentric, which has been shown obviously to improve strength, muscle tone, and also injury prevention as well, like tendinopathies. It's a great way to help people get better from tendons because obviously there's no blood supply, so they respond to loading. And actually, sticking off that, going off tangent, we've done some work with ECU with Professor Robert Newton there, and he's looking at how eccentric, and beyond, but this particular study, eccentric overload, and how that affects various diseases. Now, I won't give any results away because I don't want to say anything wrong, but there's been amazing results from people who have been or who have got prostate cancer. And obviously, part of their treatment causes cachexia, which is muscle wastage. And with muscle wastage comes fatigue, comes inability to move. So if we can alleviate this through eccentric training, which has been initially, they've seen an improvement in their muscle mass, even with testosterone deprivation therapy, that's just crazy stuff. So the application beyond just training and getting massive is actually, you've got the health side as well, which this research that Professor Robert Newton, I should say, is doing is next level stuff. So that's just the eccentric overload. You can mimic that. Typically people would do that again if you're lucky to have partners when you train and you use it like a safe machine, like a leg press. You could have people load weights on the way down, but again, that's a bit tedious and takes up time. You could use chains as well when you're squatting, even just simple things like stepping up a step with two, not with two, you can't step up a step with two, but up with two, down with one on a calf raise or something like that. That's mimicking eccentric overload. Other ones on there, you've got no inertia. So no inertia training is great for a couple of things. High performance. So if you think about no inertia, it's reducing the resistance to motion. So it's like something is in motion. Think of I don't know if you in Australia or you call it a swing ball, but think of a swing ball where you hit the ball and it goes around a pole.
Oh, the pole. Yeah, I know. I used to have one of those in the backyard as a kid.
Yeah, just imagine. So if you held the ball static and you hit it, it may go around 3 times. But if it was already moving and you hit it, there's no inertia on that ball because it's already in motion, which if you relate that to sport, a lot of things we do in sport is that an object is already in motion. So no inertia, the type of resistance there is great for power. But on the flip side, is great for injury prevention or injury, let's say, reduction, because people may have vulnerable joints. So it helps them to get out of their flex position, for example, in the shoulder press.
Awesome. That's going to be nearly impossible to mimic in the gym, that one. Like that one, out of all of the ones that we've had, just thinking about it logically, that one is so challenging that you as the trainer might be able to perhaps like assist on the cable machine, like that initial kind of help with that push. Is that kind of the way that you're thinking about that? But in the gym, that's quite a challenging one.
Yeah, the closest thing to it, I would say, is ballistic training, because you don't have to decelerate at the end of your range, like, throw in, jump in. That's probably the closest thing to it. Kind of, I know other machines, they have air resistance or pneumatic resistance. That's no inertia as well. So that's kind of another application.
Yeah, it's almost like I'm thinking of like a slam ball slam and then you pick up the ball as it's coming back up, right? That's kind of it.
Yeah, and then throw it overhead because it's already in vertical motion.
Cool. All right. I hope you're all enjoying your biomechanics lesson today. We're going to keep going because I'm super happy about this. Rhys, what was the next one?
Another one is, we call it viscous resistance. Now, the machines have different settings, so you can make it like the feeling being thicker or, let's say, thinner. So viscous and viscosity is like the thickness. So, for example, water. So the machines can mimic what it would be like underwater. Now, I'm sure everyone's been in water, but if you move slowly, it's quite easy. Whereas if you move quick, it's hard. So the viscous resistance is great for strength training because you won't get the resistance unless you move quickly. So it prompts you, and the guidance on the screen motivates you to make sure that every rep is as fast as you can, which means you get as much resistance as you can. So great for strength, great for power. And the other thing there is that there's no eccentric either. So it's all concentric strength.
Yeah, I'm going to pause you there because I think that training in water is one of the most underrated facets of training. And I'm not talking about swimming. I'm talking about training in water. I was lucky enough for years when I was working in big box gym that we had access to a pool. And for any performance or any rehab training that I was doing for my clients, they would go in the pool. For those two very reasons that you said, is because for injury rehabilitation and prevention, moving in the water, like you're so buoyant, like it just feels so much safer. There's not as much pressure on your joints. All of that stuff is so good for you. But yeah, that challenge of moving quickly through the water is so great for energy system development, and you really gets your heart rate up. So then when you're looking at it from an athletic point of view, if you've got clients who can't move on the floor because they have bad joints or whatever, pop them in the pool, all of a sudden they can run, for lack of a better term, because they're not impacting their joints. And it's just, in my mind, I think that when we think about underwater training or water training, we think of aqua, and we think of an aqua class and the instructor sitting up there with the pool noodle and kind of like, for lack of a better term, the plus 60s getting under there because it's good for their joints. And yes, it is excellent for them, but there's such a massive application that I think we're really missing, which is why I really love this style of resistance. It's so cool.
And you can have resistance in every plane as well. So wherever you move, there's resistance. So it is completely functional. And, when I go away on holiday, if there's no gym, obviously I'll take a set of bands, but there's normally a pool. So I'll go in the pool and I'll do my legs in the pool, and I'll just sit on the side or like hold onto the side of the pool and just do 30 on, 30 off of just as hard as I can leg kicks. And that is just absolutely destroys your legs.
I like it. I'm all for it. And we have a couple more. Is that correct?
The BioRev also has isokinetic resistance.
Yeah, this is the one I wanted to talk about.
Yeah, so the isokinetic is a gold standard way of testing strength, and you see it quite often in a rehabilitation and even high performance settings where you see them sat on a leg extension kind of hybrid leg curl machine, and they're pushing as hard as they can and then pulling back as hard as they can through knee flexion, extension. And essentially it's constant speed, but the force you push against it is then able to be measured. So you can then predict how much force is actually being applied because you know the constant speed of that moment arm or the lever. So the machines, the BioStrength machines, use isokinetic for their strength testing because obviously when we're programming, we need to have some sort of baseline. So the tests are through isokinetic resistance.
Now, this is so cool because you don't need to do 1 RMs or 5 RMs or 8 RMs with a barbell to be able to get pretty applicable data and information from this kind of testing. Is that correct?
Definitely. And I think you went on it the other day, didn't you? And you were testing right and left leg and the differences and similarities. And you were quite surprised, no?
I had so much more strength in my left leg, like so much more strength. It was quite an interesting discrepancy. It was nearly 30%. And like that's massive in terms of asymmetry when you're looking at just any kind of functional movement. And I don't train for anything in particular. I just train because I enjoy it. And if you're looking at injury prevention, I have pain in my left hip. I have pain in my left elbow. So the knock-on effects of having information like that is massive because they're not necessarily things that you can test for. Like, if I was to do a 1 RM single leg deadlift test, the complications in setting that up, they're so much more challenging. Like it can be done to get an actual true test of that strength there's a lot more variability to it. Whereas you set up on the machine and it does it for you. You only need to do those few reps and it's a very, very successful test without much complication. Is honestly like you said, the information, like we said at the start, is incredible for then that ongoing programming. So I've now had to increase my rep range on my right side and try to like balance myself out a little bit. And I'm going to retest in a few weeks and see how I go.
Yeah, it's great. Like all this data, is scary. You don't need all of it. So yeah, going back to the start when we talk about data, just understanding what is needed and what is important, because you can test everything under the sun, but unless you're going to use it, what's the point? And another element of that isokinetic, there's a test in there, which is a power test. And that uses different isokinetic like speeds, let's say, or internal resistances to plot your power curve, which from that test, you can then get your optimal power in kilos where you achieve power. So if I'm doing leg press, my power might be 1,000 watts. It will then say you need to have 35 kilos to achieve this. So then you've got the prescription element of it. It'll tell you if you wanted to work high force power, so more on the strength speed side of that curve, what weight you need to achieve that. Or if you want to work your speed strength on that side of the curve, what weight you need to achieve that. Obviously it'd be a bit lighter. So there's so much in here, and anyone who's listening wants to have a go, please I'm sure Vanessa will provide my email, give me a message or give Vanessa a message, and would love to get your feedback on it.
Yeah, I think, like I said, having the understanding in the background of, number one, having done those tests at uni and understanding what they feel like with those terrible isokinetic machines back at uni that were clunky and massive and sound like an airplane's taking off. And, for me, it's a little while in between tests, but I'm not going to tell you how long. Coming onto a machine that does it for you in such a smooth way that I would put any single one of my clients on there, like any single one of them on there. And I don't necessarily do strength testing with my clients because it's not applicable. They're not going for PRs or PBs. They have an interest in increasing their strength, but you can see the increase in your strength just by the numbers that you're picking up. You don't have to do a strength test to be able to see the difference. And strength testing is inherently risky for general population for sure, but even for athletes, it's pretty risky. Every time I had to do a strength test, you have to sign a waiver saying that if you break or if you damage yourself or whatever, that you're not going to sue the person who's doing the test. So I think we forget sometimes how risky setting up those kinds of tests are for our clients. And what are you actually doing with that information? And that's so important.
Yeah, and it doesn't always have to be max strength testing. It could be just asymmetry, testing more regularly, a sub-maximal level. It's quite fun doing it as well on the BioStrength. So it doesn't always have to be max testing because that has a massive psychological effect on it as well. So having the potential of having something like this at your fingertips is huge.
If you were to give any advice to trainers who wanted to perhaps explore any of these resistance profiles with or without the machine that we're talking about, I'm just talking about in general, what do you think is the benefit for their overall training to give these a go?
Good question. Variety, training, whilst having good consistent training is important, having a varied training method, whether that's periodized or not, is huge. And just playing around with it yourselves, because then and understand what your clients might need. Like everyone's got their own theories, which, they're not right or wrong, but, you can make your own theory of training. Obviously, if it's safe and effective, why not have a play around with different resistances? For example, like contrast training. That was just someone lifting heavy and then jumping high. And, oh, cool, that heavy lift actually made me jump higher. And that then developed contrast training. So have a play, I guess. Maybe we could throw a leg press underwater and see what happens. Or you could just buy a Technogym leg press. But no, just get creative. And as long as it's safe and effective, I say, why not?
That's cool. Very, very cool. Okay, we're coming up near to the end here, and I have a question that I ask all of the guests that come onto the show. And so if you had the ability to change absolutely anything in the fitness industry without any consequences right now, what would it be?
Overseeing education in Australia can be tricky. We often struggle to get as many people as we'd like at some of our workshops. So I would say the willingness to learn and have an open mind, because at the end of the day, you don't have to agree with what we're saying. But part of being a great coach is being able to critique, and you don't always have to have an opinion, but you can create an opinion after you've had someone else's opinion so you can form your own. So I would say willingness and openness to learn and just talk to people and get involved, because you never know where it'll go. For example, my journey with Technogym started when I was working in a gym back in Wales after I finished my master's, and I wasn't feeling too great one day. However, someone from Technogym came in to educate us on some of our new equipment that we had, and I wasn't going to go in because I was feeling a bit ill. However, I was like, nah, you know what, I could learn something here. And if I hadn't have gone in, I would not be here today. I wouldn't have worked in Italy at HQ for 2 years. I wouldn't have been at my dream job in Australia for 4 years. Wouldn't have had many opportunities, all from that one decision. And the guy happened to be a biomechanical expert, and I learned so much from him. His name was Grant Powell. So Grant, if you're listening, I would say willingness to learn and openness to learn. It's a people business. We're all one community, trainers. Let's, learn off each other.
I very much second your rhetoric there. It's so important. And I'm exactly the same as you. There's so many opportunities that have landed my way just because I put my hand up to go and learn. And there were other people who just didn't want to do it and never really understood it. But this is where I am. I'm still here. We're both here trying to spread this message of education because we feel so passionate about it, which leads us to talking about and getting exposed to all of these amazing, amazing things. So my last question for you is, if you have any advice for any new trainers coming on board, what do you think in terms of tech? Where's a good place for them to start?
Technogym. I would just expose yourself to a variety of different machines and go beyond the quick start, because there's so much more in there than some of these cardio machines, maybe even some strength machines, or just have a play around with different things, keep up to date with the latest trends. But at the heart of everything, I would say be clear on your purpose and why you do what you do. I'm saying that because I just finished reading this book called Ikigai by Hector Garcia and Francis. Basically, it's a Japanese concept where, it's finding your purpose, really. And it's so powerful. So I'd recommend having a look at that.
Awesome. So good. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for talking with us today. And guys, every bit of information about how to contact Rhys will be in the show notes, as well as some links to some very, very cool pieces of equipment and tech. Thank you, Rhys, for your expertise.
Thanks, Vanessa.
We are so grateful for your support and for tuning in to our podcast. We know that many of you have friends or colleagues who would also benefit from our content, and we would be honored if you could share our podcast with them. Sharing on social media, email, or even talking about us to a colleague is such a huge help in getting our message out there. We truly appreciate your support, and we can't wait to continue to grow and connect with more people through our podcast.